Hello, my name is Kevin Rourke and I'm here to tell you about the 11th session of my ongoing Only War campaign to 13th Kinog Grenadiers. This session the group continued on towards their objective. They are to retrieve a cogitate from a castle that's been contested by various enemy forces. The castle is surrounded by a city. I don't have all my notes on me right now, so I don't know. I'm trying to remember the name, but it's proving a little bit difficult right now because it's been a few days since I actually ran the game. But this session there's a few odd things going on. I think we've had a bit more to fallout from the players having shot Lieutenant McBrander having shot the two prisoners they had taken, who were members of the Death Corps of Krieg. I think there's a little bit of trouble brewing in party. Not everyone seems to be terribly happy with how that went down. So we'll see. Something more might come of that in the future, but this session, not really too much of that. The first thing that happened, the players are going off trying to find their way there, but while scouting ahead, Corporal Love heard gunfire. He identified there was a large group of orcs, about 50 plus vehicles, and they were attacking a chapel that was being guarded by Adeptus Arta, Sisters of Battle. And the group decided to help Sisters of Battle, even though they knew there's no way this group was directly allied with their Imperial faction. They might be able to interact amicably after this, but after discussion they decided they wouldn't leave the sisters to fight these enemies by themselves. So they started attacking in. What they saw before them was there's a group of about 3 dozen orcs moving towards the chapel on foot. I think to be standard, I suppose you can get to standard equipment for orcs anyway. And then there were also a few other enemies, like there was a war truck, two war tracks, and there was some kind of a battle wagon, some kind of battle tank of some kind. And as well as this, there's a few other, it's still fun because the players don't have, in Circus was there, so none of the players who were there actually have Forbidden Lord xenos. So I'm not giving them the correct names for a lot of this stuff. I'm just describing some orcs with particularly large, menacing looking guns. They're the little boys, so they've got like rapid fire weapons that are quite deadly. And at the same time, I also described there was a group of orcs that seemed to be having some kind of crude rocket launchers on their backs, or rockets anyway. And when they used them as jump packs, the players were surprised, because the way it's described was like, we don't have Forbidden Lord xenos. You've never seen Storm Boys before. Next time you see Storm Boys, it will be a bit more clear. So all of the information the players have at this stage regarding xenos is hard won and gained in combat. So that's kind of cool, because they know a decent bit about orcs at this stage, or a certain degree at least, how to face them on the battlefield. Nothing about orc culture, for what little there is. And when they come across other aliens, they're quite stumped because they don't have these lores. But they started spreading out early on. They gave them a surprise round because they had snuck up with the orcs and weren't there. Didn't know they were there, so they'd get around where they were shooting in. Obviously, when they're firing off plasma cannons and maximal and things like that, it's going to be a bit obvious where they're getting attacked from when you're firing weapons of that grade. But even so, they spread out and they started shooting. Corporal Love with his plasma cannon kept going maximum, shooting at the main enemy battle wagon, but he kept redeploying at regular. When it was cooling down, he was usually redeploying because he was worried about them returning fire. And I think overall the guys did pretty well in the fight. I just think if they had, I think they really need to get back to coordinating their fire, because earlier on they're very good for it, and now I don't think they're coordinating as much as they should. No, so most of them are trying to coordinate, but I think they could do a lot better if they were combining fire more. They're all trying to target the targets that are best for them to take out, which is fine, except it doesn't necessarily mean they're getting their kills and reducing the enemy numbers as quickly. They might be the most effective against that particular target, but it's usually going to take more than one hit to take out an enemy. Now, when you're shooting at someone with a plasma cannon, if it's infantry, regardless of whether it's an Orc, a Gretchen, or a Chaos Space Marine, you're usually going to take them out with a plasma cannon shot on maximal. With vehicles, not so much. But I think this fight just had a bit of difficulty doing that. They weren't organising as well, so the fight, they didn't put things down as quickly as possible. We still had a few highlights which were interesting. At one stage, Lieutenant McBrander fired off his lasgun, his deathlight, and managed to hit and kill the driver of one of the Orc war buggies. And it spun out of control. The Storm Boys had noticed their position and were diverting off to attack them. And the actual war buggy actually went through their location. I said, okay, I'm going to treat this kind of like a ram, because it's still going forward, but it's slowing down, it's not accelerating or anything. But it's out of control. I said, okay, it's not really diverting towards them, so I'm going to give them a bonus to avoid it. They got jump packs and everything, so they can just make a operate check. Every single one of them failed. Like the four of them were still alive, so he just killed 5 orcs with like one shot, which is fantastic. He is delighted because Engineer Kasugi modified a lot of their weapons last session, and the bonuses to hit are huge for him because he started the game with a ballistic skill of 30. I believe it's 30 anyway, and he hasn't brought it up, even though ballistic is an aptitude for him being the regiment, but he's been bringing up his command and bringing up his toughness, which both are good because at this stage I think he has to roll on over 90. I think it might actually be over 91 for him to actually fail a command test at the moment. So the guys are trying to expect and rely on that +4 bonus damage, which you can do from the get them order. Although it's kind of funny because they're half-heartedly teasing him out of character when he fails. Like, oh come on, this is your job. So he's like, oh, maybe I should do it next turn then. But they need that's what I'm thinking. Is like, teasing him back at her. You're kind of joking about it out of character because obviously he can't succeed every time, or he can't yet. He's been bringing up his toughness of late because he's been worried about the survival of the character. So the players have been pumping a lot of XP into his toughness and his sound constitutions, which isn't a bad way to go either. But it took them a while to actually, when they're engaging the orcs, we had an interesting moment where Commissar Barca started running towards the enemy vehicles, particularly the battle wagon, which I described had they could tell that underneath its surface it had previously been a Lehman Russ battle tank. And that was a bit, the players like, oh, okay, fair enough, because you know from a lot of the guys, all the guys in the game I think have played 40k, the tabletop game, to one degree or another anyway, so they know orcs do this. But the orcs managed to take out the Sisters of Battle. They inflicted a few casualties from shooting mainly the tank weaponry that did anything. But when the large group of orc boys actually managed to get in, the slugger boys managed to actually get in, they finished off the Sisters of Battle in a turn or two. And unfortunately then the orcs started turning their attention towards the players. They hadn't inflicted, I'd pre-done out at what point the orcs would start retreating. How many units and different things had to be taken out. And the players were very close to this, and they had a lot of guys on the ropes effectively, but they hadn't finished off an awful lot of the orcs, which just didn't work out well because the orcs were still coming at them. So that's what I'm saying, if they'd combined fire more, it might have worked out better for them. But Commissar Barca had been running forward to attack the looted battle wagon, and when the Sisters of Battle died, the guys were here, and the Sisters of Battle were here, and tank started turning. It started using his tracks to turn, but it was kind of going backwards a little bit too while it was doing it, and he's running forward with melt bombs. So I was like, God damn it! And he's like, God damn it, and he thought I was just going to have him just full on retreat back while firing at him with everything. It's like, no. But it was trying to get a better angle on the different guys. We did have an Abba because he was running in his hard target, and Sergeant Jorgensen has a chameleon cloak. A lot of the guys are actually quite difficult to hit. So we had a funny moment when Sergeant McBrander had a battle cannon shell fired at him, and it actually came in on his head, and he didn't have any dodges left. And it hit him in the head and rolled up damage. Didn't roll minimum damage, I think rolled a little bit below average. It hit him, and he was like, I'm dead. But then I said, no, work out the maths. Okay, I'm trying to make it sound like I'm the camera hanger. I probably wasn't that camera at the moment, but I'm trying to sound suave, never mind me. But it actually stripped off all of his wounds. He lost every single one, which is kind of he thought he was doing crits. I said, but you've got a bionic eye, so that should increase your toughness on your head by 1. That's the rules work, or believed it work anyway. I know they haven't Death Watch. I think they have an Only War. I'm not 100% certain. So if anybody knows for sure on that, you can feel free to correct me. But at the time, I was quite happy to go with what I believed it was anyway. And so he was actually hit in the head, and I described after that point every now and again, like there's a dent in his bionic metal head now, there's scorch marks everywhere, different things. And I described to him that there's a dent in it, and I described it every now and again, and his bionic eye flickers up, seek the attention of a tech priest. Of a qualified tech priest. And he's asked him because he'd been in Cirque, so he's like, I'm not doing surgery here, it's it's not safe to go opening up your head in the middle of a battlefield. So the players managed to just kind of, Commissar Barker running towards us, eventually getting close. It's like, I thought I could just do a melee attack with the meltdown. I was like, well, not really, He's like, what's the point? And I was like, you got a bit disheartened about it, which I can understand. I was like, well, if you don't throw your crack grenades, that's fine, but when you're actually in close combat, you don't just bash it off. I was like, I don't see how meltdowns work like that. I think you have to actually set them. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to need a tech use test. And unfortunately, he fails tech test. I was like, I'm not going to say it blows up in your face or anything. It's just taking longer than you expected. He was on top of the enemy vehicle. I said, well, he's doing the top armor. This isn't designed specifically for war, so I'm going to use a ruling that they had from the one of I think it was the city fight rules they had. I remember buying the codex for the tabletop game. So I said, for the war game, I said, yeah, I'm actually going to have to count this as rear armor because you're hitting from on top, because it's not, this vehicle isn't designed for siege warfare. So he'd stand it for a second turn. He was like, he's just kind of, this has been a terrible idea. If this thing gets destroyed, because this thing had been taking multiple maximal charge plasma cannon hits, and he was like, I'm gonna take, this is gonna blow up and this is gonna kill me. I said, no, we'll see. We were kind of like, okay, we'll see. He's like, yeah, you're a bit close. I didn't want to say it, but okay. So, but he successfully does it, and he jumps off that turn, and then roll up critical, and he had hit the motive system, I think it was. So the vehicle, he had jumped off here, and the vehicle flipped forward and went away from him. There was no explosion. The vehicle was actually relatively easy to salvage, but it was pretty cool, because I was actually thinking, yeah, this is going to blow up and kill him. I'm far preferring the crit tables that they have in Only Warfare vehicles, because you just don't have one crit table like you do in the other 40k RPGs. The ones that have actual crit tables. Not that Black Crusade doesn't even have vehicle rules. They have demon engine rules. Like, I don't like how they have them done out, because it doesn't have the same punch to me. It doesn't work out quite as well. But the players managed to destroy this, and I was like, around at that point, the orcs started to retreat. They started running. I said, well, we can work out you guys firing at them and stuff, but the combat's gotten long enough. You'll account for a few more orc deaths before they retreat. We can leave it at that. But they went to the chapel. They were saying, well, maybe some of the sisters are alive. Maybe we can. Is like, yeah, they're all dead. They made a search check to try and see if any of them were living. But they found the hands of one was clasping in one hand a key. and this turned out to be the key to the chapel. They briefly pondered looting the Sisters of Battle's weaponry, but they decided that it wasn't, even though it was superior equipment, they would not lower themselves to doing that to Adeptus Sororitas. So they brought them inside the chapel. Now that said, Commissar Barca did take some of the bolt shells out of their bolt guns, because he uses a bolt pistol. So restocking, they found that acceptable, but taking the actual bolt guns themselves, even though they were very useful, and if they'd done it, it's like, okay, fair enough, but they decided not to, which is kind of, it's more fitting. Their characters are generally, they are, God Emperor fearing folks. So yeah, they tried to put the Sisters of Battle in the most respectful positions they could get them, because they're like, none of them are particularly good skills for this, so they just kind of placed them inside, and they saw behind the altar they found a reliquary, which they recognized from some of the heraldry and some of the pictures and things around, that this was the jawbone, a section of the jawbone of Saint Dragon. And they decided, well, we can't leave this here. The orcs already tried to overrun this position once. If we leave it here, we can't let it fall into the orc hands. So they're like, okay. And Lieutenant McBrand said, I will carry it. I'm Lieutenant. If anyone has to carry it, I will, even though I don't feel worthy. And I was like, okay, well, you're getting the frenzy talent for anyone you consider heretic. Is this? I think the hatred talent as well, or one of those. He also gained the fearless talent. However, he got additional negative to his willpower to try and retreat, because when you have the fearless talent, you get to ignore fear, but when you want to actually pull back away from combat, you have to make a willpower check, because being fearless isn't exactly sane. So that was one of the things that, how many corruption points do you have? And he's like, I've got 3. It's like, okay, you're taking -3 to all your actions. He's like, I know your attacks count as holy, your melee attacks, I think it was. So he's like, God damn it. So he's got to carry this around for the rest of the mission. He's going to bring it back to command and go, here, here's the Saint's jawbone. Have fun. Next step to try and get into the castle proper, which was still a huge thing. And like this is a 40k castle. This isn't a particularly large 40k castle. 40k castles are huge and giant Gothic structures. So there's multiple entries, but plus the space being contested. Trying to find an entrance that they could use would be. They had options. The first one they saw across was being guarded by, I think it was Macabian troops, and then they sent out Sergeant Jorgensen and Corporal Love to go in different directions, see if they could find another entrance. Sergeant Jorgensen came across an area that was being contested by various Imperial Guard forces, and then Corporal Love managed to find that he saw an area where some of the wall had fallen down. There didn't seem to be anyone defending it. There was a burned out tank of some kind. It was, I don't think anyone actually succeeded in the role, because it's burnt out, it's half buried in rubble. It's quite difficult to see, to make out all those details, and none of them are drive tanks or anything like that. So they got to make checks, but none of them passed. But it was the burnt out remains of a demolisher battle tank. And there was a lot of rubble and scree from where a section of the wall had fallen down around it. So they decided to use this entryway because it seemed unguarded, though they were wary that there might be snipers or hidden troops watching the position. They managed to climb up. I think Sergeant Jorgensen failed a roll, and he almost fell down, got swept away. Some of the rubble came out from under his feet, and I said, okay, if you fail an athletics check, you get negative to your stealth check. If you fail it by a certain amount of degrees, you might get swept away. And I'm like, okay. Sergeant Jorgensen failed, and he was going to fall back. Commissar Barker's player was like, can I try and catch him? I was like, okay, I will let you spend your reaction and try and catch him and stop him from going down. However, if you fail you're being dragged away with him because you're going to lose your footing. And he's like, okay. And he succeeds. He actually manages to hold on to him and drag him back up. When they get up, they can see there's damage, some different bits of buildings. Like a lot of the sections of, like this window walls, one of the sections are quite badly damaged. Several buildings this size were open, different things. It's lots of rubber around and debris. But they can't see anyone defending. But as they advance along, I ask them to make awareness checks. And they spot, they managed to spot just a blur. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Jorgensen, or was it Trooper Love, that managed to see just a blurry outline of someone. There was a deck corpse of Krieg, sniper. And he started firing he lined up his shot and he started firing at Commissar Barker. But Commissar Barker, I actually think Commissar Barker passed the check, so he was able to attempt to dodge. Which is a very important thing, because I think he was going to die, or there's a strong chance of you dying otherwise with a long night, or at least taking a hell of a lot of wounds. So when combat began there, it was just that sniper against him, but Corporal Love ran forward. He took out the flamer and he just ran. He's got sprint, so he closed the ground quite a bit, and he got to the base of the building that the sniper was in. And the guy started firing shots, and I was just kind of thinking with the sniper rolled fairly well initiative. Not as well as Love, so Love went for him. He's like, can't really see Love that well, where he is. But I went off and I checked the deck corpse for equipment again, because I knew there was something like that. That's a very interesting piece of equipment. He has a photon flash grenade. So he takes out the photon flash grenade and just lobs it over the side. And apparently anyone within 15 meters of those things has to make I think it's an agility or a toughness check or something. And if they fail, they're blinded for like D5 rounds. I was like, wow. So he throws that over the side. I'm like, okay, you're blinded, so you're taking, negatives to an awful lot of stuff, and it probably isn't the best idea to shoot the flamer. It's like, I'm not shooting the flamer with my allies around when I'm blind. Commissar Barker started closing ground as well, but I think it was Sergeant Jorgens who actually managed to put down the sniper. Difficult shot because this guy had a chameleon cloak. I think he hit him in the head, but unfortunately, this guy, he hit him in the head. He did enough damage to kill him, but I think he got the result where you run around on fire like a headless chicken, and he ran. I rolled the dice and he ran off the side. He landed near Corporal Love and Commissar Barker, so he's just flame burning out. I said, I thought the guys might loot his chameleon cloak and maybe a few other things except for it's like he's on fire. All this stuff is ruined, but you've taken him out. Doesn't seem to be anybody else there. And moving in, unfortunately, I'm trying to portray this as a bit of a slog for the moment. Like a lot of their missions are a lot faster than this, but this one's, they're behind enemy lines for quite a long time, so it's like weeks are going by doing different. Up to this point, the previous session, weeks and weeks and weeks have gone by. This session's all over the course of a few days. As they got deeper into the castle, the roof kind of started to get a lot more enclosed. There were no longer sort of courtyard areas and things, but they were still fairly broad. This is a 40k castle, so I described that they're a completely closed off area now, but the corridors are quite big. You could drive a tank down here. And I described it with like, oh, what kind of, it's like, oh, it's stone and things that looks like it's a cobblestone floor. And some players like, you can't have cobblestone with a tank, it'll destroy it. I said, it looks like, because, well, it's 40k, it's not actually going to be cobblestone. That, a lot of stuff looks like other things, it's not actually. And I thought, it's cobblestone. But they managed to avoid a number of enemy patrols until eventually they were tracked down by some sentinels. These sentinels actually had autocannon, and the guys were like, what are we going to do with these? However, they're saying, oh, can we do, we shoot the positive open top? And I said, yeah, you can, but going by the way they have the model and the pictures and stuff, when you're shooting at them from the front, this is all you can see. So it's going to be very difficult to actually hit a location that isn't done. But if you hit them from the side, you get the arms, the head, the body. It's only the legs really that have cover when you're shooting on the side. So hitting from the front is going to be quite difficult. So they're like, oh, okay, damn it. But they start taking out their weapons. They start firing plasma guns. Commissar Barker just stood there and he said, I don't actually really have a weapon that can significantly damage. He'd use crack grenades, but he didn't particularly want to close them. I don't think he, either maybe he forgot about them or he didn't have much faith that crack grenades would do much. Because crack grenades, they're only good, he'd really need to hit him in the rear arm with a crack grenade. And you'd still need to get a fairly decent roll to actually damage them. But Sergeant McBrandon with his power sword, he felt, I could have a fairly decent chance of actually doing some damage with this. So he started running forward. Sergeant Jorgensen took out his melta-gun because he was like, the long lads, it's going to be really difficult to actually hit them in an unarmoured location when shooting from the front. So they started firing and they really badly damaged in the first turn one of these guys. And then they returned fire. And they lined up, the both of them tried to line up their shots on Sergeant Jorgensen. One of them jammed. It's like, God damn it, these are autocannons. Like, okay, they're deadly as hell, but that's what autocannons do. But they were backed up by troops or different things, but one of them jammed, one of them hit, and Sergeant Jorgensen dodged. I was like, okay, I can see which way this is going to go for thanks. And they kept falling into fire and the damaged one and destroyed it. It was gone. And I just kind of described unfortunately, Lieutenant McBrandon had gotten fairly close to where the enemy were. He gotten fairly close to where the sentinel was, and he's like, I'm going to charge the next turn. I've lined up, so I'll be within charge range. I'm within charge range. And then I just had, well, they've blown up one of the vehicles. You've got to go with a melta gun. Unfortunately, there's a half action to move backwards. I started finding he's starting to pull back. He's still firing. He's like, yeah, he just obviously had a bit of bad luck. He's not running outright yet, but he's certainly getting a bit hesitant. He's starting to break off, at least with some distance between him and the melta gun guy. And Sergeant McBrandon's player Lieutenant McBrandon's player is like, God damn it, I just want to chop it up with my power sword. Because it hadn't been much close combat the last while. The guys are getting a lot. The fights have been either starting at longer ranges, or the other part of it is it's not always starting at long range. Some of the fights have been starting at the same range. The problem is that the guys have got a lot more XP, and they've got two quite shooty, deadly guys, and they're getting a lot better at putting stuff down range. Even Lieutenant McBrandon is actually really good at putting stuff down. But yeah, they managed to decimate. So we ended it there. We're getting towards the end of the mission. But that was the session. Not necessarily the most exciting to hear about, I admit. We had some cool moments. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time I've had to record this on problems and things. So I'm trying to keep my enthusiasm up, but it's been difficult. That's probably shown through, unfortunately. But we're getting towards the end of this mission, and this mission, like I said, is fine to feel a bit more grueling than the other ones, because it's over a very long period of time. But what will be coming up in the future will be a bit different. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.